and they shall never perish. That's a picture of the interior of the chapel. General John Marshall rededicated Suresnes one last time on September 13th, 1952, and that is the General George Marshall of the Marshall Plan. Marshall was in Europe to monitor progress on cemeteries being constructed for America's World War II dead, and to dedicate at Suresnes what he termed a shrine to the American dead of both world wars. Plans for this shrine involved the addition of 2 loges to the original cemetery chapel, and also involved the disinterment and reburial of some of the Great War dead. The ABMC disturbed these graves to make room for 24 unknown World War II dead brought in from temporary cemeteries across Europe. The presence of these new dead gave the shrine an even more powerfully Christian appearance. For rather than arrange the 24 soldiers, born God knows where to God knows whom, in the traditional row-on-row pattern, the ABMC arranged their plots, and thus their headstones, in the shape of a Latin cross. And at this point, I should pause to thank the French gardener who stabilized the ladder. It was an enormous ladder that I had to climb to get this aspect on it. I tried taking a picture of it from the ground while holding my camera up. That didn't quite work, so they found this huge ladder, and up I went. So thank you to Jacques. In his speech the day of the dedication, Marshall offered the dead as models for the living, saying, quote, "I hope they are dead to the communist propaganda that demands that we living Americans go home and leave Europe to the mercy of ruthless aggression. The dead cannot go home, and we will not go home until our friends here feel that our presence here is no longer essential to their security, and when we can leave a land free of terrors, a land where a feeling of good faith dominates life." Unquote. 3 aspects of the post-World War II revision of Suresnes are especially important to understanding the sacralization process at work in ABMC cemeteries and the importance of the soldier Christ analogy to it. First, the 1952 revision did not alter Suresnes' character as a Great War cemetery. 24 sets of unknown remains from World War II would draw few, if any, relatives mourning World War II dead to the grounds. Whatever practical, funerary purpose the relocation and rearrangement may have served is, I argue, overwhelmed by its ideological and theological purpose, which was, it seems, to integrate symbolically memories of the 2 wars and to make statements both about the character of the men and women who died waging them and about the country they served. Second, the arrangement of the 24 unknown dead in the shape of a Latin cross was a remarkably intentional act in the already highly intentional world of the ABMC. This explicit use of remains as landscaping elements is a clear expression of the ABMC's hagiographical and Christological view of the generalized, mythologized American soldier. These men suffered and died to save you, the cross of crosses can be heard to proclaim, and by their actions, they are saved. The individual qualities of the dead, virtues, vices, beliefs, doubts, the specifics of humanity are unknown, unknowable, and quite simply irrelevant. By virtue of having served the United States and having died in service, they became Christian American saviors. Third, the loges added to the memorial chapel offer guidance to Americans as to how best to remember and carry the gospel of the war dead to the world. The South Loggia is dedicated to the Great War. The North commemorates World War II. Defying the asymmetrical place of these wars in American memory, the loges are of the same size and contain the same elements: engraved plaques, bas-relief depictions of soldiers carrying an empty stretcher, and at the far end of each loggia, a single memorial room dominated by a solitary white statue. In the Great War Memorial Room stands John Gregory's memory. The World War II Memorial Room holds Louis Eiselman's Remembrance. I'll show you a picture of that in just a bit. These statues depict female figures bearing somber expressions, but the similarities end there. Memory, the Great War, evokes Mary. Her eyes are closed, her hands are raised, brought together in prayer. From the features of her face and the position of her hands to the straight, simple lines of her dress, memory projects quietude and passivity, if not quite serenity. Remembrance is not prayerful. Her eyes are wide open, her hands folded left over right beneath her right breast. Her garments are wrinkled and flowing. Her head uncovered to show hair worn off the neck, and her almost gaunt face speak of activity, engagement, vigilance. Her gaze, though pained, is vivid and lively, and fixed on something above and beyond her visitors. Remembrance is in the room, but not quite of the room. She is defined by a purpose that is out there, beyond the sacred ground of Suresnes. Memory and remembrance, devotion and vigilance, prayerfulness and watchfulness. This place, the statues proclaim, is inward directing and outward directing, a space for self-evaluation and for contemplation of the true nature of the world beyond the trees and grass and marble crosses. At Suresnes, the only cemetery where the ABMC attempted the uncomfortable task of interpreting two wars to save the world in light of each other, the patriotic orthodoxy of the entire cemetery system is most clear. We must guard our memories of these dead and contemplate their sacrificial deaths. We must honor their collective memory and continue their work in a dangerous world. These are my bodies, broken for you. Do this in remembrance of me. The ABMC understands its cemeteries to be sacred spaces, hallowed ground, venues that allow a, quote, sacred rendezvous with the immortal dead, unquote. But what does it mean to name and to construct a war cemetery as sacred? I would like to suggest that the claimed sacrality is meaningful in these 23 cases because of what the cemeteries ask mourners, pilgrims, and other visitors to imagine: a man or group of men who died for them. And because that imagined fallen subject is so decisively cast as the very embodiment or incarnation of the essence of the nation, these saviors are the ideal made flesh. Those who cannot emulate should at least pay homage. Of course, this ideal does not always correspond to the lives and deaths of those buried in the cemeteries. But in burying and effacing departures from the sainted ideal, the ABMC engages with at least one aspect